All right, I'm here to walk you through the Survey 2 exercise. So we'll get started. Your start screen might look a little different than mine since I've used it more. But you're in Qualtrics and you're going to create a new project. And we're going to create it from scratch. Um, all right, and I'm going to call this Survey 2. We don't need to categorize it. And we're off. Okay, so you should have done some prep work before you get to this point where you have four items that you should have written up to measure attunement with nature. We will get to that in a second, but make sure you have those following the instructions. All right, so in block 1 here, first thing we're going to do is label this block the main set. And then I'm going to come down here to this question type. We are not going to use multiple choice. We're going to change that to matrix. Okay, so we've changed that to matrix table. And now what I'm going to do is come down here. I'm going to remove 2 of these statements. And I'm going to go to the document where I have the Christian nationalism. I'm going to copy these items, and then I can just come in here and paste those, and it'll pull those in as the statements that we'll assess with the matrix table. All right. Then I'm going to come up here in terms of the prompt that people are going to see. It's just going to be please indicate your level of agreement with the following. Nothing fancy. And then we're going to come over here to the parameters for the editing the question. And I'm going to say use suggested scale points. And that'll put in some strongly disagree to strongly agree. I'm going to change this to 7 scale points. I'm also going to come down here and take this divider and move it over a little bit so that you have, I just think it looks a little better if these aren't so spaced out. So get it so that there's no more than 2 lines for each of these statements. And sometimes you'll get some extra statements at the bottom. Make sure you remove those. And I should have done this before, but up here, let's see, we are going to call this question religionach for religious nationalism. Okay, let me just double check. I think that question is good. Okay, so you'll notice that it's saving as you go along, so that's nice. Should have 6 items there. I do. I'm going to now, just to save a little time since I've spent some time formatting this, I'm just going to capitalize that. And up here, I'm going to say copy. Oops, that's not what I wanted. That's copies the block. I'm going to copy just the question. And you see how it drops in the question right below here. So that's question number 2. Okay, so now I am going to set up this as the attunement with nature scale. So I'm going to change this Q2 thing, the label for the question to attunement with nature, or an abbreviation of that. And I need to come down here and I'm going to delete all these statements that I copied from the that are left over after the copy, because these pertain to the previous construct. Oops. No. Go ahead and just leave one last one in there. Okay, and then your instructions were for coming up with this scale, just to give you a little practice writing it. I think I gave you 2 items that you could use, so I'm going to put those in here. So I got my, remember the first one's a pro trait and the second one's a con trait. And then you should have 4 other statements that you came up with. I'm just going to represent those with some nonsense stuff to save time here. Okay, so then you got your 6 items. And we are ready to do... all right, so now I have the 2 questions for my main set in the survey. And I'm going to come down here. I'm going to add a few more things in this main set of questions. These are my 2 big ones, but a few other things I want you to get practice with. So I'm going to add a new question. And we are going to add, the first one's going to be a text box, text entry. So I'm going to call this nat val for the value of nature. And we're just going to give people a chance to give an open-ended response just to kind of see what people come up with. So the prompt will be explain what value nature has, if any. And they'll be able to answer that. And then I'm going to add another new question, this time using the slider. I'm going to call this just sliders. The prompt's going to be, please indicate the extent to which the following describe you. And then the first one we're going to put as religious. And the second one is spiritual. So religiosity and spiritualness have an interesting relationship. They're positively correlated, but they're also distinct. So just as an example, liberals tend to identify more with spirituality and conservatives tend to identify more with religious. Okay. So my suspicion would be the spiritual would connect more with nature. All right. I think that finishes up our first block. So we're going to come down here and add another block. Click there in the middle. And that opens up this space. And I'm going to add a new question in this new block. And it's going to be multiple choice. I'm going to go ahead and label this block demographics. Usually you pull in this kind of stuff at the end. This question here, I'm going to abbreviate religafl, which is short for the religious affiliation. So what best describes your religious affiliation? And then you got your choices. So we're going to come up here with Christian, Protestant, Christian, Catholic, Jewish, other religion, and then a catch-all here, unaffiliated, agnostic, atheist. Okay. That's good. I'm going to add another question, another multiple choice. This one's going to be gender. And I can say here, what is your gender? And then I'm going to give people, so it's prompting you. This is nice. Male, female, non-binary, third gender. I'm going to simplify this just a little more and call this other. And you can do this nice thing where you allow text entry, and then you can put in here, please explain. At least I thought you could do that. Maybe I can't. I guess it's just going to say other. I don't want this last one, so I'm going to remove that choice. Okay, male, female. Other. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put here other, and then please explain. All right. Add another question here. We'll do another text entry. This one's just going to be, what is your age? And come up here and change that to age. And then we'll do one more. Multiple choice. This one's going to be diet. And then what best describes your diet? Question mark. And we're going to give them the options of vegetarian, vegan, omnivore. And I'm just going to explain that. Meat and other foods. And we're good there. We're still in draft mode here. To get out of draft mode so that actually somebody could take it, we're going to push publish. And it does this check to make sure, based on some algorithm, whether or not there's any problems with it. I don't usually pay much attention to this. Okay. So it goes ahead here and prompts you with the link that you can use to distribute it. I'm going to copy that. You can also, just so you know, if you go to distributions here, and if you click on anonymous link, that's where that lives. And so if you need to find it again, that's where it is. Once you've done that, go to another window in your browser and just paste it in and make sure it works. So you got it set. And then you're going to, oh, look, see, I noticed an error here. Click to write choice 3. So I'm going to go back and fix that. I can just close this window, go back to my survey. I'm going to remove this choice. Okay, now that I've done that, it's in draft mode again. So to get those changes to take effect, I got to hit publish. Okay, now if I go to my distributions, I can copy that link, go and drop it in somewhere else, and everything should look good. Yours will be written out here. Make sure you did that. So typically, just to point out a few more things, typically you don't tell people what the scale is about because that can kind of bias the way they approach it. But generally, it makes sense to have items that are related go together just because then people can kind of zoom in on that part of their brain. So we don't tell people that this is trying to assess attunement with nature, but that's what we're doing. Okay, and then this is obviously a little more exploratory. Sometimes you want to measure things in different ways just in case one thing doesn't work out. So you can think about how religious somebody is in terms of how often they go to church or other religious institutions, a number of times per month, whatever. Here we're just assessing it with the what's called a thermometer or a slider. Then your religious affiliation, gender, age, some other stuff. And I think then when you're all done, it'll give you that message. And you can customize that closing message too. Okay, so I'm just going to, few little comments here to wrap up and then we'll be done. So just one thing I want to point out, I just realized since I'm talking about this. So my research is mostly on ideology and values. Just to be clear, folks that would score higher on the religious nationalism scale aren't necessarily, wouldn't necessarily score high on certain kinds of religiosity. So this tends to have more to do with identity and in-group, out-group stuff than necessarily how religious somebody is in the normal way that term is understood. And so that's, but to make that distinction, that's why it's helpful to have some other ways of assessing religion. And this is just a sampling, but there's other questions I would ask about religion as well, but I was trying to keep it short for your sake. All right, that's just another example of how we can set up a survey in Qualtrics. Very useful. And we will leave it there. Okay, thank you.